Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening at whatever time that you're watching this. Hello, all, and I'm back with another video. Now, today's video is going to consist of it's a current affairs video, changing world order, Israel, Palestine, and Russia, Ukraine. I will state my opinions on these three things. So let's get into it. First and foremost, the first thing we're going to talk about is the changing world order. And I think that is important to speak about before we get into the two latter subjects that I stated earlier, because we have to you have to know how the world is changing to start to understand the events that are happening. So let's get into it. Now, the world has had a certain order for a certain amount of time now. It really started after World War II, when America had between 70 to 75% of the world's gold reserves. We had all of the wealth. Lend-Lease Act, we were lending and leasing many weapons, many resources to many different countries during World War II, primarily in Europe. And because of that, we got rich. And also, we didn't fight the war on our own land. Now, Pearl Harbor happened, yes indeed. But for the most part, if not the majority, 99% of the fighting was done across the two oceans from us, Atlantic, Pacific. And because of that, we came out pretty unscathed, pretty rich, really rich. Richest country the world's ever seen. And because of that, you know, America did something very different than what's been done throughout history. Most times when a country or a state has such an overwhelming advantage over other countries and other states, they directly take you over, to put bluntly. They directly will take you over. But no. Now, we did take stuff over, but we took things over in different ways. We decided to rebuild Western Europe while occupying it, of course. We decided to rebuild Japan while occupying it, of course. We decided to, instead of really taking full control of the country, we gave them still their sovereignty. We let them be sovereign. But like today in Europe, like today in Japan, we are still at the head of the things that they do. And also, what also happened is free trade. Anybody can trade with anyone, anywhere. And that is very different. That's why we have the globalist system that we have right now. Everything is so interconnected and interwoven because everybody can trade with anybody, and that's different. It's never been like that. It's never been like that. Usually, it was a system of regional trading. Oh, you're near the Mediterranean. You're trading on the Mediterranean and the countries and states that reside near there. Oh, Black Sea trade. You do a lot of regional trading, regional. But now, global. We allowed that because you couldn't really do that before because you had to. It took a lot of military strength to be able to send out your cargo ships to long distances, because you would then have to have ships guarding that cargo ship because they were pirates. There were other countries that were just going to take the stuff. They were going to take your shit. But now, because America was patrolling the oceans, we had the largest navy. You could freely trade. You could send your cargo ship filled with valuable resources without expending military resources. For example, Europe, they don't really have any militaries, any military strength and any military might, because we protect them. America protects their countries, protects their trade for the most part. So, and we've had a time of each country is actually, they're safe. For example, no offense to smaller countries, but Nepal, just to use an example, Nepal, there would be no Nepal if the world order wasn't the way it was, to where you can't invade anyone for the most part. You can't mess with you can't mess with a sovereign state. You can't do that. You can't do that. Because previously in history, small countries would usually be a part of another country, or if they aren't a part yet, they're going to be soon. Seeds eat seeds. It's the way the world has worked for millennia. So the current world order, or the previous world order, because we're no longer in it, previous world order was peace. You can call it Pax Americana. You know, there were a lot of civil wars, specifically in Africa. But for the most part, for what the world was used to, it was a very peaceful time. A very peaceful time. But those times are over now. The times are over. Mainly because America is pulling out of the world. The world's policeman is coming back into its own, to its country. Because it's much, much needed. It is much needed at this current point. Because America, we have very, very important issues that need to be addressed. Not necessarily immediately, but they need to start getting addressed before it becomes too late. Problems. Problems are hard to see at first, but easy to fix. But after a while, they become easy to see, but impossible to fix. So, I think it's better if we deal with the latter of that and deal with our problems, even if they're not very fully visible to the eye right now, to everyone's eye. But yeah, our world order is changing, and you can see that with the many various skirmishes, wars going on in the world. You know, it's not fully done. It's not fully done yet, but the cracks can be seen from the two conflicts that I'm going to discuss soon. Let's see, what else can we speak on about that? Let me see. My prediction for the continued world order, the new one that we're going to see, is it's going to be a very regional world. It's going to turn very regional. We've been living in a very globalist world for the last, let's say, 40 years, 50 years. Excuse me. It's been very globalist, very interconnected, very interwoven. Like, for example, people speak on China, Taiwan this, China, Taiwan that. I used to think that, oh man, China's going to take Taiwan. I am now under the impression that they don't need to take Taiwan. They already have Taiwan. And here's my reasoning. I've become privy recently that China is Taiwan's biggest trade partner, not us, China. And as you know, the issue with China and Taiwan is because the Taiwanese people are Chinese. They are Chinese. They're just the losers of the last Chinese Civil War. They are the nationalists. And they lost to the current rulers of mainland China, the communists. So they fled to that small island. So they are one and the same people. They are the same people. Keep that in mind. Now, that being so, also, China allows the Taiwanese people to visit mainland China. And forgive me if I'm wrong, it's either, now there's going to be a big discrepancy, it's either they can visit 6 months at a time or 6 years. I'm leaning towards 6 months at a time. I forget. I haven't read it in a little bit. But, and that was in, I read about that was in about like 1970, so actually who knows how long they can actually stay now. But they can already stay. And so people from mainland China have a lot of family in Taiwan. Now, does it make sense? And you there in mainland China, they already are the Taiwanese's biggest trade partner. Does it make sense to go to war for Taiwan? I don't think so. How are you going to be able to convince people to go over there and decimate their family, their kin? I don't think so. I think, China always has a foreign policy of talking big and not doing what they're doing, and not doing what they say, but they're talking big to seem big. I really don't think that doesn't make sense, because if they invade Taiwan, everyone knows Taiwan makes the chips that go into our phones and everything. They make those chips very, very important, extremely important. If those chips stop, the economic world order will go to a halt. That's what happens when you have an interconnected world, economic world, trade world as we do today. Any one thing goes awry, it could bring everything down, along with what's already happening in the other parts of the world. China invades Taiwan, everyone pays. Everybody pays. Why do you do that? Semiconductors, Taiwan. Also, why do you go? What sense does it make to go and invade Taiwan for the Chinese? It really doesn't make any sense. Not to me. It doesn't make any sense. And ask yourself, put yourself in Chinese shoes with the things I've already stated. Does it make sense to go to war? For what? To fully occupy them? So that little island is recognized as fully as part of the CCP? It doesn't make much sense to me. Next, actually, since we're already on the topic of China, let's talk TikTok. Now, as we know, TikTok is no longer suspended in the U.S. President Trump handled that. Now, I haven't looked enough into how this was resolved and what was done to get it specifically resolved. But in the first place, the reason why it was such a big deal and there was such a problem with TikTok is because TikTok is a better social media platform than we as Americans than we can produce, than Americans could produce. It was better than Facebook. It was better than Instagram. It's better than Twitter. because its algorithm is something we cannot reproduce. We all know. I do not have TikTok, but at one time I had TikTok about 5 years ago, and its algorithm at that time was absolutely insanity. I'd say something. I'd say something about anything. I'd talk about a video game. Wouldn't even be on my phone. I talk about a video game. I go on my phone to go on TikTok, and it would be the first video there. That is an insane algorithm, if you ask me. That's an insane algorithm. And the problem with that is now, money transfers over time. It transfers over time. It goes our previously where our money was, where the world money was. For I'll just start. It was with coal. We had coal. Coal was very valuable. Steamships, all that other stuff. Industrial Revolution. Then it goes into oil. Oil money. Petrodollar. The money's in the oil. We're going places. We're invading places for the oil. Now, the money is in the data. Data. Internet. Technological age. The money is in the data. So, if the money is in the data and we've done things, if we've invaded countries for the previous resource where money was, oil, banning a social media platform, it's a cakewalk. Data, that's a lot of money that's being missed out. That's not being taken advantage of by our government. Excuse me. So, obviously that could not, that could not fly. That does not fly. That can't fly. Money is in the data now because you have someone's data. You know what they like. You know what they don't like. You show things all over their phone. They buy stuff. It's a nice little snowball effect. But that's where the money is. The money's in the data. So they were gathering data better than any of our social media platforms could, which is quite impressive. And another issue with that was the CCP. It says whatever company is out of China is owned by China. Is owned by China. Now you might say, oh, it's not directly, the guy who owns it isn't Chinese or something like that. No. The Chinese government definitely had a direct link to the social media app. I have no doubt in my mind. Now, I don't know how the issue was resolved. I have to look into that. I haven't recently looked into that, but I have to see how this was fully resolved. It's actually quite interesting. Okay, and that's enough on China. Let's get into Russia, Ukraine. Russia, Ukraine is very, very interesting because it, in my opinion, it has taken the cover off, taken the mask off of NATO, taken the mask off of the American government. And I say all that because, where's my water? It's up there. I'll get that in a second. Now, I say all of that because this current war that we are at with Russia, we are at war with Russia. The American government is at war with Russia. It's not really Ukraine. Ukraine's just doing the fighting for us. We're at war with Russia. I say it's taken the mask off of us because it's showing for what we really are. We are an empire that wants to expand because that's what empires do. You expand. And when you are expanding, you have to take out all foes around where you have just expanded. It's called securing your safety. We are a security state. We are a global empire. The greatest, mind you, while I say this, the greatest country the world has ever seen. And people say that when that is said, that is not a lie. That is not an over-exaggeration. Never ever has a country's form of diplomacy is just knocking down your government and putting in a different figurehead. If that's what you call, that's what we call diplomacy. It's not meeting with another country's leader. It's okay. Let's send in our secret police, our secret police is the CIA. CIA causes a coup, topples whatever foreign government they feel like, and that's diplomacy. And then we put in somebody who will listen to us. Now, of course, every country can't be toppled just like that, but most countries can. Most countries throughout the world can, because most countries' governments aren't as stable as you think. Aren't as stable as you think, and aren't even a fraction to as stable as what our government is to what we see. Our government literally runs itself. We just had a president, 80-something years old, who we all knew was not calling the shots. He was not calling the shots. He was not making the decisions. Not even close. But for the most part, our country ran just fine. Everyday life went just fine. Our government is a machine. It's definitely a machine. And it's different than other governments in the world. Other governments in the world don't run like that. Other governments in the world are constantly trying to just survive. Our government isn't trying to survive. Our government is now focused on expansion and consolidation of power. But, so, that's our form of diplomacy right there. Toppling down your government. That's why a lot of countries don't like us. That's what happened in Iran. Iranian hostage crisis in about, I think it was 1977. You know? We toppled, we had a certain figurehead in. We toppled the government, had a certain figurehead in. They didn't like it. Crisis occurs. But, where was I? Yes. Excuse me. We are an empire, so we expand. NATO is nothing but our empire. That's what NATO is. NATO just outlines the members of our empire. Because NATO originally came out was to fight against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is no more. The Soviet Union has been no more for about 25 to 30 years. If I'm remembering the date exactly. Maybe 1995. I could be really off. The Soviet Union has not been around for the last 2 decades, 2 decades. So why else would we keep NATO? Because NATO is our empire. It has the names of the countries within our empire. We promised Russia a very long time ago that we would not extend NATO to Eastern Europe or former Soviet states. But what do we continuously do? Expand eastward. We told Putin we would not expand more east. Do you know that 2 times Russia has tried to join NATO, tried to be part of the world system, and we've denied them both times? One was Putin, one was Gorbachev. We've denied them twice. Most obvious question is, why do we do that? Why would we do that? It's because I think it's very obvious from the events that have been happening. We want the complete dissolution and destruction of Russia. We want to wipe Russia off of the face of the earth. And I think that is absolutely psychotic. You don't get the option of wiping off a nuclear power off the face of the earth, especially the second largest nuclear power. You don't get that option. That's not an option. It's not an option. Because one, they could just send their nukes out. That's one. Most obvious. Two, if you get the dissolution of the Russian state and the government is collapsed, then nuclear warheads get put in miscellaneous hands. Turns into a war. They turn to warring states within the old Russian government territory, the old Russian country territory. Warring states, different factions having nuclear warheads. That sounds extremely dangerous. That sounds extremely, extremely dangerous. We have to live in peace with them. It's not an option. It's not an option. Now, if before nuclear warheads, nuclear power was a thing, alright, then I'd understand, let's completely eliminate them, because that's very much possible. Without, your country might end too, but there's no nukes, then there's no assured destruction. There's no assured mutual destruction. There are possible ways you could get around with just destroying them. But that is no longer what it is. That is not what it is. So we need to stop. It's very childlike how we are going about this. And I feel bad for Ukraine as well. Because Ukraine is the sacrificial lamb for us. Because Ukraine will no longer be a country after this war is over. They are completely decimated. Infrastructure, economically, demographically, they're done. Especially if they let their young men fight. If they start to let their young men fight, because that's something they have not done yet. They won't tap into that demographic pool yet. Pretty much people my age and lower. They have not tapped into that yet. If they tap into that, it will be catastrophic. And it's already very, very, very bad. Very bad. But if they decide to tap into that young population, Ukraine, the Ukrainian ethnicity will cease to exist in probably the next 100 to 200 years. But their country will cease to exist most definitely after this war. Because they are decimated. They're absolutely decimated. They've had hundreds of thousands of lives gone for this war that they could never have won. They could have never won this war. They could have never won this war. Why would we lead them on? Because we told them, oh, we'll support you. Our support, our indirect support, is not going to help them win this. Excuse me. It's not going to help them win this. They didn't have the men, they didn't have the military strength, the economic power to compete with Russia at all. Russia's been doing what it always does to win its wars, throwing meat into the meat grinder. They throw men, they throw men, they throw men, they throw men until the other country can't take it anymore. Knowing that strategy, that's their main strategy, Ukraine they never stood a chance, which I always thought it was a pity that we led them to believe that they had a chance instead of negotiating right out of the bat. But there's also no way we were gonna do that either, because we have an empire to expand. So it's a very sticky situation. Um, Putin says the way they can come to peace treaties will become to is if they keep the current land they have that they've already taken. The longer we take to get this peace treaty and the more land they will take. So we need to honestly hurry up and get a peace treaty if what we want is some type of salvation of the current iteration of Ukraine. Something. Back to NATO. Georgia is no longer trying to join NATO. Good, because that is another former Soviet state that we need to stay away from. We need to leave that alone. We need to leave the East alone. We very much do. But I think President Trump might pull out of NATO if the countries within it do not start paying more for the military, for their militaries, because we pay for more of our military than any country in the world has ever paid. Ever. We pay about 3 more times than the next 3 countries put together after us. It's insane. It's insane. Now that's what you have to do when you're a global empire, I suppose, because you have to be everywhere. We have 755 military bases in the world, and that's only the ones that are known. That's only the ones that are known, just to say. The known ones. And we think China's a problem. China has like 5. So, there's a little snippet there. Maybe you can look into that yourself too. Some of the propaganda that gets played to you about China as well. But on to the last topic. Israel, Palestine. Now, as we've all seen, there is a recent ceasefire going on now between Israel and Palestine, which is very, very good to see. But to be quite blunt, what we are seeing in Israel and Palestine is a social media age, technological aged, in real time, live colonization. Clearing out the land. That is what we are seeing, to be completely blunt. That is what's happening. Now, people will say, in terms of who are like, oh, they shouldn't be doing this, there's no such thing as really good and bad. There really isn't. If you're going to understand how the world works, if you're looking good and bad, you will always be hurt. You will always be hurt. So if you want to understand the world, you can't look at it from a good and bad. Nobody on any land today is in their original land unless maybe they are an Aboriginal peoples. If they are some of the untouched tribes. But other than that, nobody is on a land where they first started, where you're on a land where someone else first started. So first, let's get that straight. There's no good or bad. You just feel bad for one side or you feel bad for the other side. That's what it is. And what we're watching a live colonization. It is. And it is what it is. That's what we're watching. We're watching what used to happen all the time. That's what we're seeing. We're watching what, as Americans, what our government, what we did to the Native Americans. It's live with cameras and social media and Instagram stories. So that's why it can seem so shocking. But this is nothing different than what has gone on through the world's history. So, many will say, and many can say, that's the Palestinians' land. Indeed. It is not Israel's land. Palestinians were there first. But the fact of the matter is, as sad or as morbid as it may sound, the land goes to the victors. Once more, seeds eat seeds. There's two sides to everything. It's a morbid fact, it's a morbid truth. The reason that doesn't happen to America, let's put it in perspective. The reason it doesn't happen to America is because we can defend ourselves at a very efficient and high, powerful rate. That's the fact of the matter. Mexico talks a lot of shit about our government, but they're not doing shit to us. Canada talks a lot of shit about our government, but they're not doing shit to us. They're not. China talks a lot of shit about our government, but they're not doing shit to us because we can defend ourselves. Now you say it's not fair because they can't defend themselves, the people of Palestine. And you make a very, very great point, and you're not wrong when you say that. The same as people from Israel when they say we don't feel safe, we don't want them here, blah 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 blah. They're not wrong either. And when it comes down to that, I mean, neither are wrong. And then you're at war. To the victor will go the spoils. It's a morbid reality, but that's the world that we live in. The world is not sunshine and rainbows. It really isn't. Our world is somewhere you get eaten when you can't defend yourself. Specifically in the old world. Across the Atlantic and across these Pacific oceans, the world is not like it is over here. It is a completely different world. That world is a completely different world. We're called the New World for a reason. They work differently. Their roots go back farther to their lands, to their cultures and values and morals and stuff like that. So that's why their fighting can seem very perplexing and confusing to us over here. And we don't get it. Why would they do that? because unless you put it in perspective, all that goes on over there, all that has gone on over there, you will never understand how that world works. That world is different. It's a different world. It's not what we do over here. It's not how we are. It's not. It really isn't. It's a different world over there. Shit works differently. Excuse my French. Shit works real differently over there. But yeah, I'm really happy to see the ceasefire, though. I am really, really happy to see the ceasefire, because to be completely honest, the Israelis they've been fucking up the Palestinians. Excuse my French again. They've been fucking them up, destroying shit. They have been. It has been. It's not something nice to see. It's really not. It's really not something nice to see. But that's how the world works. So I do not judge, because that is the world. That is the world. How can I judge it? That's just how things go. That's just how things work. But the ceasefire is nice to see, because nobody likes seeing pictures of people blowing up and all sorts of madness. So it's very nice, and I hope they can come to some sort of ceasefire. And as you can see, they're already trying to get the Palestinians out of there. They asked Egypt. President Trump said something about Egypt. Egypt came out and said, no, you're not sending them over here. So we already see the process of what's going on and what's going to occur. They're getting kicked out. They are getting kicked out. And America is going, that's a topic for a whole other day. The stranglehold that Israel has on our government. But to say something short about that, Israel is our only foothold in the Middle East. And remember, we are a global empire. Also a security state. So we are not going to stop them from securing their safety. And we are going to back them through anything that they do. You ask yourself, how can this all happen and nothing be done? But Joe Biden speaks out both sides of his mouth in terms of the topic, because we truly do support them. We truly do. It don't matter who the president is. It's in support. Support. Which is why we're trying to figure out ways. When I say we, obviously this whole time we're talking about America. Ways to get the Palestinians out of there. Sending them away, because within the next 10 to 15 years, there's not going to be a single Palestinian in Israel. And we're actually watching a live process of the finishing product of colonization. The finishing product of it. It's wrapping itself up in Israel. We're watching the wrap up of it. So, you get to see history happening right before your eyes. Look at it, watch it, evaluate it objectively, without your feelings involved, so you can see exactly what's going on. But with that, this video is over. I hope you all have a very splendid and blessed day, and I thank you for listening. Till next time.